With us today on the Big App Show, an award-winning author whose latest novel, The Face Thief, I enjoyed very much, and very happy to have him on the show today. Eli Gottlieb, welcome to the Big App Show.
Thank you, Adam. Nice to be here.
And I got to tell you, I like this, and let me tell you why I liked it, and then we can get into it. First of all, it's a story. I'm amazed how much you were able to paint a picture of these characters and the settings in a relatively short book, I felt. And it was almost like a really good movie. You know, it takes about the same amount of time to read this as to watch a really good movie. And at the end, you're like, huh. And you kind of walk away with like, I want to turn to someone and say, well, what did you think about that? But it's also a difficult book to discuss because like a good movie, it's easy to spoil kind of what happens. So maybe you'd like to set it up and take us as far as you want into the actual story of The Face Thief.
Sure. I mean, you know, there's several different levels of the thing. I mean, like all novels, what it's finally about is relationships. I know that doesn't really help in terms of the story, but I wrote this book like I write all books, somewhat organically, without really having a sense of a clear plot. It sort of evolved as it went along. That's why when people always ask me what it's about, I kind of hesitate. However, I've evolved this sort of one-size-fits-all plot description, which I'll
lay it on us.
It's about a woman who uses the ancient Chinese art of face reading, which is a real thing. It's based on traditional Chinese medicine, 5,000 years old, to defraud men, essentially, in business dealings. And, you know, that's the bare bones plot summary.
Well, I'm not familiar with your other work, but the technical aspects I thought were really good. I know a lot about investing. I know about how investments work. You know, that was really spot on. There were several other technical areas that I thought were really, really good. The ancient art of face reading, though, is completely new to me. Were you already familiar with this concept? Did you research?
I was a little bit familiar with it because I lived in Boulder, Colorado for 8 years, home of everything alternative.
It's the home of face reading.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people practicing TCM, as it's known, traditional Chinese medicine, of which face reading is a part. What's happened is that America has taken this ancient discipline, which was used for medical purposes, and kind of converted into a more recreational, sporting event. So people really do have face reading seminars. They give face reading. People really do attend them, both for general interest and also for advantage in business. Because if you know, for example, that the person who's sitting across the table from you, who's about to go into a deal with you, has the large nostrils, which tends to indicate being a spendthrift, that's an important piece of data to use in negotiations. So, it's a real thing. I mean, I'm not an expert in it by any means. I read a few books. That's it. And I was very self-conscious as a child, which helps. I mean, I think we're all face readers to a certain extent. We all, when we see somebody coming towards us on the street, look for instances of friendship or threat or interest or whatever. I mean, we're all involved in face reading. I just made it a little more specific, elevated it in the book.
Although I'd say kind of the art of that is being lost. And in fact, if you walk down the street, New York City is a great place to do this. No one's looking at each other. They're all looking down, they're looking off. The eyes meet for a second. Oh, let me look away. It's really quite sad.
Yeah, no, it's because of the menace and the fear and the speed of everything. But in other parts of the world, the head-on gaze is still practiced.
So there's very little that I could find about you online other than you grew up in Jersey, which is always a good thing. Where in Jersey?
A town called Cedar Grove near Montclair.
Verona, New Jersey, right here, baby.
Really?
Yeah, I lived there for 12 years.
You are kidding me.
No. And Jersey gets such a bad rap. Sorry?
You know where Cedar Grove is?
Of course I do. Yeah, of course.
Spent time at Verona Lake.
Yeah, sure. In the park?
Yep. The little boats, the park, and the lake there. Yeah, I love that. It's a beautiful little British fantasy.
Yeah.
I was moved there when I was 4. I was born in Manhattan, moved there when I was 4, and it wasn't until I was an adult and it was already almost gone that I realized what a beautiful little green spa that part of the world actually was.
Yeah. Yeah, right off Route 3, you know. It's
Totally.
Hey, I read that, I'm like, the guy's from Jersey. This is going to be easy. This is a slam dunk. Yeah, exactly. But before you started writing, were you always writing? Did you do other things?
I was always writing. I mean, that was the only thing I was good at as a kid. I had a kind of a twisted childhood. My only sibling was developmentally disabled. My mom was a piano teacher, and she wanted to encourage me whatever creative things she could. So when I was a little boy, she started taking me to poetry writing classes. I started publishing work when I was very, very young. And, you know, you skew towards that which comes easily, and that was what I did. I wasn't a good, I was never chosen first for any sports teams, but always first for the spelling bee team. So.
Okay, well, there you go. The die was cast.
Right.
Did you, when you finished the manuscript, was it longer than this? Did you really? There was a lot of work done on the editing.
This book went through an unusual process of boiling down and condensation. I was trained as a poet, and that's my natural instinct, my default is towards compression as a writer. And you know, there's not a lot of fat on those sentences. You could argue that they're overwritten, which they might be, but there's not a lot of excess, flowery stuff going on because I really am based in the sentence. I'm rooted in the sentence. So, and I tend to write and rewrite and boil away. You know, I mean, there are people who tell me they think the book could and should have been longer, which is legitimate critique. But it didn't get edited by the editor, it got edited by me.
Okay. And there was interesting use of italics, which really defines, you know, one side of a character, one character. Let's put it that way. There's really not like just one voice speaking. There's multiple, and it's really one of these stories where everything, and you know it's happening. It's all going to kind of come together in the end, and you know you kind of set yourself up for a sequel almost. I mean, it's an open end in a way that it can end. And it's done, yeah. and we know how it's going to continue, but there's
actually one of the book to film agents, you know, you have a literary agent, then you have a book to film agent.
Right.
One of the book to film agents is pitching it as a TV series by making a plot modification, which I probably shouldn't reveal, but because she wants it to be an open-ended, ongoing thing.
Right.
The book that I'm working on now is actually a sequel to my first novel, several novels back. So I don't think I'm going to write another sequel to this one, actually.
Okay. Now, I apologize. I haven't read your other work because, you know, I only do this for free books, and what I get is what I read. But I would almost see, like, the movie pitch meetings, like, oh, we love this for a movie. We got to test the ending, man. We got to do 5 different endings to see what'll work with the audience. But
right. The dreaded focus group.
Exactly. Have you had anything else turned into television or movie?
No, my other 2 novels were both optioned for the movies, and one actually got a little bit close, but like most authors, nothing ever actually made it to the screen.
It's a complicated process.
Yeah, it all, you know, the typical time is about 6 years between book and movie if it ever gets made at all. And when the economy cratered, so did indie film, and a lot of talent went into TV in the last 3 or 4 years into big ensembles, like Sopranos and all the things that spun off of that. So it's harder than ever for a guy who writes books like mine, which are not big movies, to get them made, you know?
Well, on the other hand, I also feel, you know, and I live in Austin, so there's a very creative scene here. I feel that because of the economy tanking, that there's actually, this is where we're going to get a lot of great independent works of art, like independent movies, and it feels like that's, you know, kind of cranking up. Of course, everyone has kind of the same question: is like, well, we can make this great movie, but will we ever make any money? And you know, so everyone's still kind of at the burger joint.
It's you know, as a guy who writes for a living, it's like I can't get too invested in the whole process. I just have to let other people take care of it. If you begin writing books, for example, with the idea that they will be movies, you're doomed. That's a recipe for mediocrity, literarily. You know, you can't think that way. The new novel that I'm working on, for example, I may have screwed myself permanently in terms of movies because it's in the second person.
I'm sorry, it's what?
It's in the second. It's written in the second person, in the you. You know, that last time that was done was by Jay McInerney in Bright Lights, Big City.
Right.
But so yeah, I mean, I just can't think. I love movies, and during the writing of novels, it's often very useful for me to go sit alone in a theater and just watch the way they're telling the story. Of course, the problem is that, apropos of what you and I were saying just a moment before we went live, you're everything as the novelist. You're the director, you're the actor, you're the key grab, the best wife, you run the craft table, you know, you're everything.
Right.
And so sometimes I would come out really feeling overawed by the fact that there were 500 people telling a story, you know, as opposed to my little computer screen. So, but I love movies, and they're such a quintessential American art form as well.
Well, the way I started off our chat here is exactly what I felt. This, to me, was really the written equivalent of a really good movie that, you know, you just sit down, you read it, you're through it fast. I mean, really, it's only like 250 pages, I think, or something, not even. And you really accomplish an incredible amount in such a short, you know, amount of words. It was really good. I really enjoyed it, and it felt like there was a lot of you in it. You know, just reading the inside flap here, knowing that you have two stepsons, that kind of comes back. There's, you know, New York.
Right.
Does this always happen? Is that very typical for you?
It always does. I mean, my first novel, like most first novels, was just explicitly autobiographical. It's about growing up with an autistic brother in Jersey in the 60s and 70s. And the next book was not autobiographical. It was a great freedom to get away from that. Neither is this autobiographical. That said, all fiction is autobiographical, of course. You know, you're your only resource. Frankly, for yourself, inform every single character that you make, male, female, young, old, whatever. You're it. So, you know, it's a long continuum when you say autobiographical and not. It's not cut and dry. One other thing to the cinematic comparison. You know, one of my real driving ideas in writing this book in particular was what something Ian McEwan once said, which was, most novels are boring. And I was determined that this not be boring. I've always been a visual writer. The visual is really where I operate, and that's why I felt like I was pulling through strength in writing a book where there was so much description involved, the faces of them. Because that's what I like to do anyway, and that is cinematic, I suppose. But I really wanted to craft a book that would give the reader, the feeling of being pulled forward as they read. And, you know, and if everybody had the reaction you had, which was that they read it fast and got enthused, then I succeeded.
And you did, and you've also inspired me now to start re-exploring, neuro-linguistic programming without a doubt, but also the art of face reading, which is just something we don't pay enough. Well, of course, in the movies, you actually do. You know, a good director does obviously pay attention to this because that's what it's all about. But we've completely lost that, and it can help me from not getting screwed. Because it's those devious women, man. They know how to do it. It's really, really dangerous. One other thing that just jumped out just as kind of funny, and I wondered if this is something that is actually real or you had heard about, the concept of video dependency syndrome, which one of the stepsons in the book has.
Well, no, I made up.
I
that
like it.
I did, but you know, it's based on the experience of having teenage kids in my life, boys who do form an addictive dependency towards video games. You know, it's a tricky situation because there are those who argue that video games, especially the giant collaborative games like World of Warcraft and things like that, produce an arena in which children can experience teamwork, consensus building, trust, and things like that. It's actually very, very positive. There are people who argue that, but you know, for somebody like me who's invested in the literary universe, the written word, I watch this with a kind of a sad feeling because My dad was a rare book collector, a paper maker, and a book binder. You know, my stepkids could give a shit. I mean, it's just not happening. They're not interested. I'm no longer in their lives on a daily basis, but for many years I was, and I had a lot of my father's beautiful, rare literary and scientific first editions on a big wall in my study. You know, they just thought it was the room that smells weird.
Right.
That was about it. But if I could just go back to one quick point that you mentioned about this would help defend you against predatory women. There's an interesting blog post that appeared yesterday in Italian where a guy, obviously was bilingual, he read into this novel and he put 3 bits from YouTube on his review, which to his mind illustrated the 3 types of predatory women. Let's see, there was...
Hillary Clinton. I'm sorry, I'm just guessing.
No, it was the types, not the individuals. It was, there was the dead cat, which is the sort of passive but deadly feline, as exemplified by a clip from the movie All About Eve. I don't know if you know that one. With the young Betty Davis.
Yeah, sure.
Who tends to be a fan of the great actress Betty Davis, and eventually ends up supplanting her. Mm-hmm. Then he has a clip from Double Indemnity with Barbara Stanwyck and Prince Rose, fantastic, with great Billy Wilder film. And then The Blue Angel. You know, another classic with Marlene Dietrich. But it's wonderful. It's showing 3 different types of, you know, of predatory women. So anyway, for anyone who's interested, check that out.
And you're also talking about 3 outstanding actors, you know, so that of course really seals it up. Well, it was good, man. I really enjoyed it. Just coming from your background of books, how do you feel about ebooks and the publishing industry in general right now?
Well, I feel like this is a moment where everybody is kind of just headless and jabbering and running from pillar to post and doesn't know what's going to happen. You know, publishing has always been, at least in my lifetime, it's always been very unstable. It's one of the most really unstable industries where everybody, I've worked, you know, as a journalist in New York and all that, so I kind of know a little bit from both sides. And, it's always been an unstable place where everybody is where they are by virtue of them not having yet been promoted or fired. But now they are truly in a panic. They are truly in a panic because they just don't know. There's a huge sea change that is upon us. No one really knows what the long-term effects will be. No one really understands how to cope. Everyone is sort of going day by day, and people just don't know. There's definitely a feeling of potential and anxiety in the publishing world.
Yeah, that's interesting.
My own feeling is, like I said, we don't know. You know, I mean, I am invested in books, and basically everything up until the electronic age was along the same 5,000-year-old continuum, where, you know, there was a one-to-one relationship between a product being made and a product being distributed, and you knew where the source and the expression were. They were in relationship. Electronic media severed that relationship, you know? And we're in the cloud. No one knows where it starts or ends. And people have not yet calculated what the effects will be. What are the effects of children having unlimited access to internet, to porn, for example? I mean, no one knows. We don't know yet. You know, the results are unknown.
Well, it's interesting because I listened to you speaking, and it's in a way analogous to I come from the music industry. You know, the disarray of the music industry 5, 6, 7 years ago, and of course that industry is actually dead on a you know the big publishing, the big record company level. They had an additional issue which I don't think they realized, which is they degraded the actual quality of the music. You know, MP3s are compressed 10 to 1, so. And this is maybe a lesson for the written word. When kids hear live music, they're blown away. It's like, oh my God, this sounds so amazing, because your brain is actually working very, very hard to put these missing bits together to make the sound complete. And in a way, that maybe an analogy there with ebooks, where there is such a difference between ink printed on paper and the Kindle or the Kindle app on an iPad. It's very, very different. So that, I don't know. I'm just kind of shooting shit.
When you talk about the degrading the sound, is that whole debate over tube versus chips, tube versus resistor, wanting the warmth of the tube amplifier back, that kind of thing?
Not quite the same, although I am an audiophile in that regard that I prefer the compression of tape versus digital, and there's a lot of musicians who would agree. But the making of an MP3, or even what you buy on iTunes, which is a different format, but it's still compressed. So the only way you can compress something, it's like this video image, like we're now speaking with each other, we see each other, I can see you clearly, but if I really see you in real life, boy, it's going to be a big difference because you're just missing data, and it's a 10-to-1 ratio. So your brain is good at filling it in, and yeah, I know how the guitar is supposed to sound, but you're not really hearing it. So you're not getting the same relaxed feeling. So
right.
Instead of just a different warmth or general sound, you're really missing resolution. And this is why live music, a lot of money is being made in concerts and people playing live. It's not on that scale. And to me, it's like having an actual book is just that much more pleasurable. It really is.
I've always been kind of a throwback. I resisted computers as long as I could. I wrote by hand for a long time, and then I typed on a typewriter for a long time, and then eventually, of course, I had to kind of give way. Now I'm a self-hating novelist who writes on a computer. I don't write longhand, but I just think that we are. I was talking about this with a friend. I think that we will go down as we will eventually be seen as pioneers at the beginning of a gigantic world change, which we still, it's just beginning, really. And people will look back on us and see us as incredibly quaint and making do with very, very primitive technology. We haven't yet calculated the extent of this change. But I think that's how we will be identified historically, as people living during this huge transition.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that the hard drives that they find in 100 years will still work. I'm doubtful about that. That's a whole nother problem.
Right.
There'll just be no history. It's like, what's this junk? It doesn't work anymore. I can't hook it up to our fiber optics.
I was a great letter writer, and as were my friends. I grew up with a bunch of writers. We literally wrote thousands and thousands and thousands of letters, and I don't know what's going to happen. Again, has anyone ever published an email collection? Well, it's not. We're not going to know. Maybe in 50 years we'll know. It's a huge resource. Letter.
We're not going to solve that. We can try, but you and I aren't going to solve it. Eli, thank you so much for taking the time today.
My pleasure.
Again, I really enjoyed it. And any idea when your next novel will be finished, or is that just kind of a
finish it within a year, which means that it would be published in a couple of years. That's my hope.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll meet in the meantime. You never know. In Jersey.
Great.
But this is it. It's The Face Thief. If you want a copy of it, all you have to do is tap on the button if you're watching this in the app, or just click on the link below. It'll take you to Amazon. You can pick it up from there. Eli Gottlieb, thank you so much again. Great talking to you.
Thanks. Very, very pleasant. Thank you very much.